Everyone learns differently. Some people prefer to learn independently and have more control of their learning, while others prefer instructor-led classes. Now let's discuss the difference between these two styles. Learner control is typical in asynchronous e-learning courses. It allows the learners to select the topic they want, control the pace at which they progress, skip some lesson elements such as practice exercises, return to previous lesson to review material, and select display preferences. This learning design is ideal for those who are highly self-motivated and works best with learners that have higher metacognitive skills. Conversely, lesson control, also known as program control or instructional control, is common in most in-person classes and online instructor-led courses. These synchronous courses typically progress at a single pace, follow a linear sequence, and use one set of teaching techniques. This learning design is ideal for those who like to interact with others and participate in teacher-led classes. In general, control options fall into three categories. The first one, content sequencing. Learners can control the order of the lessons, topics, and screens within a lesson. For example, many e-learning courses allow content control through a course menu on the left side or top of the page from which learners select topics in any sequence they want. Also, links placed within the lessons can lead to additional pages in the course or to external websites with related information. The second type is pacing. Almost all asynchronous e-learning courses allow learners to progress through the training at their own rate. Learners can control the time spent on each lesson page by simply clicking the next or continue button. Likewise, options to move backward or to exit the course are made available on every screen. The last type is access to learning support. Learners can choose or bypass instructional components of lessons such as practice exercises. Within a given lesson, navigation buttons, links, or tabs lead to course objectives, definitions, explanations, additional references, coaches, examples, help systems, or practice exercises. Now let's look at some common navigational techniques used in asynchronous learning. First, course and lesson menus in left-hand frame, pull-down window, or section tabs. This technique allows learners to select specific lessons and topics within a lesson or a course. Then we have links placed within teaching frame. The links allow learners to access content from other sites on the internet or from other sections within the course. Then we have pop-ups or mouse-overs. These provide additional information without the learner having to leave the screen. And then we have buttons to activate forward, backward, pause, replay, and quit options. These buttons permit control of pacing among pages within a lesson and of media elements such as video incorporated into a lesson page. Some e-learning courses have guided tours, overviews of course resources accessible from the main menu screen. And then we have active objects. Graphics on the screen serve as links leading to information, simulations, or locations relevant to the object. Now, let's talk about the benefits of learner control. Advocates for high learner control propose the following benefits. First, increased interest and motivation. It is often argued that involving learners in the decisions regarding their learning process could increase their interest in the content and foster their motivation to learn. Second, adaptation to preferences and cognitive needs, leading to better learning outcomes. According to Schreiter and Gurgitz, 2007, learner-controlled hypermedia environments enable instruction that is adapted to the learner's preferences and cognitive needs, for example, to their prior knowledge level. That is, learners can select and sequence information according to already existing affective and cognitive structures. Giving learners control actively engages them in the learning environment, leading to better learning outcomes. Third, affordances for active and constructive information processing. According to Patterson, 2000, learner control may support a deeper processing of the information presented because it forces learners to continuously evaluate which of the information may help them to achieve their learning goals and to decide between different information units. In addition, the multilinear access to information affords learners to put more effort into identifying the relationships between different information units and integrating them with prior knowledge, as it is a case of linear media, for example in textbooks, where the author provides the argumentative structure for the learner. Fourth, last, acquisition of self-regulatory skills. Learner control not only supports the acquisition of content knowledge, but also trains students' abilities to self-regulate their learning process. According to Acevedo, 2005, granting the user control of the learning situation permits individuals to evaluate consequences associated with the self-directed learning and to learn better how to learn. Now let's discuss some of the drawbacks and caveats of high learner control. On the contrary, critics of high levels of learner control suggest that it will result in extraneous cognitive load, which will waste valuable mental resources that could be devoted to learning. Researchers have concluded that many learners make poor learning choices. This conclusion is evident in calibration research. The focus of calibration measurement is not on what we actually know, but on the accuracy of what we think we know. According to Stone, 2000, although most of us feel we have a general sense of what we do and do not know, our specific calibration accuracy often tends to be poor. For example, Dunlowski and Rawson, 2012, manipulated learners' accuracy judgments during practice exercises. The results showed that those with the most overconfidence scored lowest on the final test, while those who were most accurate in their self-assessments scored highest. In other words, overconfident learners could skip important lessons and exercises, or not complete the course at all if they were given high learner control. Another issue is the correlation between higher learner control and higher student learner. Do students actually learn more if they were given more control? In a recent set of experiments involving Brazilian engineering students liked the high control version of the lesson much better than the low control version, but did not learn significantly more. Keeping in mind the drawbacks and caveats, Clark and Mayer propose 5 principles for the best use of learner control to optimize learning. The first one is to give experienced learners control. Most learners want control of their learning process. However, as mentioned earlier, learners do not always make the best choices. So, Clark and Mayer offer 5 tips on when to give learner control. When to give learner control. First, when learners have prior knowledge of the content and skills involved in training. When the instruction is a more advanced lesson in a course or a more advanced course in a curriculum. When the topics and lessons are independent of one another so that the sequence does not affect learning. When the choices among lesson elements are an essential design element to help learners build decision-making skills. And if the course is of low complexity. The second principle is to make important instructional events the default. Set the next or continue button to lead to important instructional components, or remove the skip and next buttons for important content. This will force the learner to make a deliberate choice to bypass important elements such as practice exercises and examples. By requiring the learner to bypass content, they are more likely to participate in the activity. Subsequently, this can reduce the likelihood of disconnected view of how confident the learner is in their performance versus what their actual performance will score at, or in other words, calibration. The third principle is to consider alternative forms of learner control. Here, there are 3 types. First, shared control. In shared control, the instructional program makes some decisions by offering the learner with different options from which the learner can choose. Shared control will require additional resources to create multiple tasks of similar difficulty and guidance levels. Then we have advisement. With advisement, the system presents suggestions to learners regarding which tasks they might select next after completing an exercise. For example, If the learner successfully completes a moderately difficult task with some support, the system would then suggest they try a task at the same level but with less or no support. And then there's the recommender systems. If you have a Netflix account, you have encountered a recommender system. This recommender system can also be applied to instructional design, although more research needs to be done on the benefits of various types of recommender system in order to prove it is a valid form of advisement. Our fourth principle is to give pacing control to all learners. Break up the content into smaller chunks for manageability. This is also known as Mayer's segmenting principle. Giving the learner control over the speed of which the material is presented, such as through the use of stop, rewind, replay, next, or continue, the learners spend almost 3 times longer on content. Finally, offer navigational support in hypermedia environment. Links are great, but use them sparingly. Too many links are associated with cognitive overload, so use links sparingly. Use navigation options to avoid too much mouse movement. Use headings and descriptions as they help to improve memory and comprehension, just like in a traditional text document. Use course or sitemaps for resources that are lengthy and complex, and for learners who are novice to the content. If your content will apply to learners with different tasks and instructional goals, consider multiple versions of a course map adapted to the instructional goal. One very good example of learner control use, which adheres to Clark and Mayer's principles, is the app Duolingo. Duolingo was recommended to me by my peers in one of our discussion forums this semester, and I now use it to, review Japanese and practice. I do exercises. It really helps me brush up on my Japanese. What is Duolingo? Duolingo is a web-based learning tool designed to help learners master a new language using segmented lessons. Segmenting the lessons allows the user to revisit any lessons they choose, implementing the learner pacing control design element. Once the learner has selected which language they wish to pursue, so for example, Japanese or Spanish, Duolingo will present a short skills assessment to determine their current knowledge, which will then place them into a level of prior knowledge. This adaptive control design helps to avoid any redundancy with users that have some previous knowledge to bypass the introductory pieces should it be not necessary to continue. So in conclusion, enabling high learner control and designing asynchronous e-learning courses offers several benefits, but we need to keep in mind the caveats. We should follow Clark and Mayer's guidelines for the best use of learner control in order to effectively design and develop e-learning courses that optimize learning. Thank you for listening.